Hello everyone, welcome to the Tizen webinar. My name is Daniel Juyong So. I'm really honored to share my knowledge through this Tizen webinar. The topic for this webinar is how to write Tizen native UI applications. Specifically, I will focus on UI part of native applications. Some topics are already covered in the previous webinar sessions. Fundamental topics like what is Tizen and why Tizen is important are covered in the first webinar session by Carson Heitzler. And the Tizen native application framework was covered in the last webinar by Sanjeev. So, I'm going to skip those topics and dive into a development of Tizen native applications UI directly. During this webinar, you will learn how to use EFL toolkits and make your application's layout with EFL. I will have demos for documentation browsing and Tizen IDE and emulator during this webinar. Before I start, let me introduce myself very briefly. I'm a senior engineer in Samsung Electronics. I work in the Tizen UI Framework EFL team, and I'm an active Enlightenment EFL open source committer. I'm involved in some Tizen-based product shipping, such as Tizen-based camera and smartwatches. Yes, there are some Tizen-based products in the market. This is not surprising anymore. There are Tizen-based cameras like the NX300, NX300M, and NX1. Also, there are Tizen-based smartwatches, such as the Gear 2, Gear 2 Neo, and the Gear S. There is a reason why I mentioned those products. Many pre-installed applications on the Tizen-based products are written by the Tizen native framework, and UI is written by EFL toolkit. So, what is the Tizen native framework? The Tizen native framework consists of some native APIs like App Framework, Location, Messaging, Multimedia, Network, and etc. Also, it consists of some open source libraries like EFL and KO. They offer C APIs, so you can write C or C++ applications with those APIs. The Tizen native framework is lightweight and fast, so you can write light and fast applications using the Tizen native framework. That is why Tizen-based products have Tizen native applications. Because Tizen is not just for the mobile profile, it can be used for vehicles, tablets, wearables, TVs, cameras, and even PCs. So this lightweight and fast Tizen native framework becomes the strong point of Tizen. And web framework is also based on the Tizen native framework. There are numerous documentations about Tizen native framework and application development. Let's go to the website. This website is developer.tizen.org, and this website is mainly for the application developers. And there are documentation, downloads, blogs, support, and forums. Let's go to the documentation. I'm going to the dev guide. In this panel, there are different versions of Tizen documentations. For now, the latest version is 2.3. So let's just click this. In this Tizen 2.3.0 documentation, there are 4 categories. Getting started with Tizen, Tizen Mobile Native App Programming, and Tizen Mobile Web App Programming, and Tizen Wearable Web App Programming. During this webinar, I'm going to cover Tizen mobile native UI app programming. So I'll just click this native app programming. There are very useful documentations inside this and basics of native app programming, IDE and tools, and etc. And for UI, you can refer programming guide and tutorials, API reference, and sample applications. Let's look at programming guide. Here is a UI part. So it shows you how to create the application UI. You can use EFL and EFL's widgets, and you can use thread. Also you can use OpenGRES. And in tutorials, UI tutorials, there are very good tutorials about EFL and UI applications. And also there is a API reference. This API reference describes how each component supports the APIs and the details of each APIs. Especially in UI category, there is an EFL part, so there are officially supported APIs in this documentation. Lastly, there is a sample applications documentation. Even for the sample applications, we support documentations. So through these documentations, you'll have idea how to write Tizen applications and especially Tizen native applications. And during this webinar, I have mentioned that you will use EFL Toolkit for Tizen native applications UI. So what is EFL? First of all, it is EFL.elf. EFL is a toolkit. It is a set of libraries that provide a wide range of functionality. It was created to support Element 17 Window Manager in 2001. EFL is targeted at not only desktops, but also embedded devices since day one. EFL always focused on staying lean while providing fanciness. This is how EFL is put together. Actually, there are more libraries in EFL. This is simplified to make it easier to see clearly. There are documentations about them in Tizen.org website. So let's go to the website again. For each categories, there is a UI part and EFL is there. EDJ is EFL library and ANA, EVAS, widgets, they are EFL libraries. So you can get some documentations here. And also for the tutorials, there is a UI tutorials and EFL documentations and API reference as well. So this website is the place where you spend your time when you check for the APIs and usage and samples. So why is EFL used in the Tizen native framework? First, performance. As EFL is highly optimized, it offers good performance. Its rendering model is a modern scene graph one that makes this easier to achieve. Secondly, EFL uses less memory for the same features compared with other toolkits. Thirdly, EFL consumes less power or battery, so it is good for embedded devices. EFL supports a separation between the GUI layout and your application logic, and you can easily change your theme at runtime. EFL supports some basic animations that you can use easily on your application. EFL has supported OpenGL for more than 10 years and OpenGL ES for about 5 years. EFL supports various backend engines and OS, such as Software Rendered X11, Raw Frame Buffer, UGL, GLES2, OpenGL X11, and both shared memory and UGL-based Wayland, and even OS X and Windows. EFL has a large API set that supports a host of features. With the combination of these APIs, you can do most of the things with little trouble. EFL is scalable, so once you write your application, you can make it working well in other devices which have different resolutions and different DPI and different screen sizes. So, how can you write Tizen native applications with EFL? Let's look at the Tizen SDK first. Recently, Tizen 2.3 SDK was released. The latest version is 2.3 revision 1 at this moment. It supports mobile and wearable application development in one SDK. For the mobile, you can write native and web applications. For the wearable, you can write web applications. You can get and download Tizen SDK from the official Tizen website. Go to this website and you can download the Tizen SDK. And easily install the Tizen SDK. Just click Next, Next, and Next. During the installation steps, you can choose profiles. Mobile and wearable profiles are supported in one SDK. I normally install both, but you can choose one based on your needs. But for the Tizen native application development, I will choose mobile profile because Tizen native application development is possible only in the mobile profile at this moment. Once you install the Tizen SDK, you will get a lot of utilities. For the demo, I will use IDE and emulator, so please be prepared. The first step of writing Tizen native applications is to run Tizen IDE. Then create a Tizen native project. You will get some templates and samples. Now, I will have a demo for the Tizen IDE and briefly overview the Tizen native UI app templates and samples. Okay, now I'm running Tizen IDE, and this is the latest version. Okay, it started, and let's go to the file and new project. Here, there's a Tizen project, and there are Tizen native project and Tizen web project. Let's click this Tizen native project this time. Now, we've got new Tizen native project wizard. There are templates and samples. There are three different types of templates. Templates for libraries, templates for service application, and templates for UI application. For the UI applications, there are two different templates. The first one is just a normal basic UI application template, and the second one is a basic UI application with BDC. The second one will be covered in another webinar sessions, so this time I'll just cover the first one. And about samples, There are three different types of samples. The first one is native app. This native app samples is an actual application that works fine, so you can just check the working like Tizen native applications. And the second samples, native UI app, they're just implementations of the UI part of applications. So they show how to write your application's UI with EFL. And the third one is native UI framework samples. It shows how to use EFL libraries not just for the UI but for the anything like thread, animator, and transit, map, and etc. So now I'm going to run Tizen. I'm going to create a new project based on Tizen template. Okay, template for webinar. Now, a new project is just created. There are many different directories like include, resource, source, lib, shared, and there's a main file, and let's look at the main function first. It sets the callbacks for the application frameworks and the basic UI app events. And it starts the app actually by calling this UI app main. This UI app main starts the application's main loop. And the first callback, which is called is app create. This app create callback is called when the application is created. Here it just calls create base GUI. And in create base GUI, it actually creates the widgets and objects for the UI. So the first object is window. It creates a window and it sets the rotation callbacks and sets some callbacks to window, and the next object is conformant. Conformant is commonly used for mobile profile, and this handles the application's layout resizing for the indicator and keypad or something like that. So when the keypad comes up, the application's content layout is shrunk. So this is done by conformant automatically. And here we just created a label object just for the demo. And that's it. Here we run these applications. So first, we need to run the Tizen emulator. And in the Connection Explorer, you can run Emulator Manager. From the Emulator Manager, you can create a new Tizen emulator, but I already created one, so I'll just run this Tizen emulator. This is based on the WVGA resolution. And close this emulator manager. Okay, the Tizen emulator is just launched. It is fast, right? And now I'm going to run these applications on the Tizen emulator. First, this app is installed automatically and launched automatically. So this is all about the template. Now what you have to do is to create other objects like buttons, maybe frame or list or something like that here, and add callbacks and put your application's logic. That's all. Once you have a skeleton of your application, next job is to design your application's layout and its architecture. Don't rush into the code. Take a deep breath and design your application's layout with a deep consideration. Or you have to rewrite your applications later. There are three common ways to create applications layout. First, manually handling objects. Move and resize your objects manually, pixel by pixel. In this way, you can place objects pixel perfectly. But this application would not be scalable. So when you install this application into different devices, it's not guaranteed to be shown in a correct way. So I don't recommend you to use this way to write general applications. Do this when you test something or when you write game applications. Secondly, using container widgets. Container widgets contain other widgets and places it according to their own policy. Let's suppose you use a box as a container. Then you can pack other objects vertically or horizontally inside that box. And let's suppose that you use Navy frame as a container. You can push and pop your views with some animations. Navy frame automatically supports the animation of push and pop for the view changes. This is a general way of writing normal applications. Thirdly, using EDC script. EDC script is a script language which is supported by EFL EDJ library. You can write a separate plain text script for your languages for your applications for your layout. This is very simple script language. But still, you have to learn a new script. So I recommend this only to advanced developers. Tizen IDE actually supports EDC GUI editor, which is called Inventor. Inventor will be covered in another webinar session. Okay, let's talk about creating your application's layout with widgets. In EFL, Elementary is a widget set library. It supports about 75 different widgets such as background, button, check, entry, label, and etc. They are often used when you write GUI applications. Tizen supports about 36 widgets among these officially. So please use these widgets when you write UI applications. And there are guidelines and API references for these widgets in Tizen website. Let's go back to the website again. Let's suppose you want to use a button. In the programming guide, UI and widgets, you can find button widgets documentation. And it shows a lot of different styles of the same button widget. You can create a button in this way and add icons and add text. And you can set the different style names. And finally, you can attach new callbacks to your buttons. So there are supported callbacks like clicked, repeated, pressed, unpressed, or something like that. So by just reading these documentations, you understand how to create, how to add icons and text, and how to add callbacks to your widget. And same goes for the other widgets. So, if you have any doubts about the new widget, then go to this website and read the documentation. This is not all. When you go to API reference, There's a API reference for each libraries, especially for elementary widgets. If you click button, ERM button add, ERM button auto repeat set, or something like that. There are documentations for APIs. When you click it, you can get a detailed information about each API. The same goes to other widgets. So this is the right place to start your application layouting. Okay, here is a setting sample applications. This application is the one you can easily find from your mobile device to change your device's configurations. Look at the screenshot first. It has a title area and list. Inside the list, there are many different items. If you select an item from the list, the next view will be coming, and there will be an animation which is supported by the Navy frame. Let's test this settings application from Tizen IDE and the emulator. From the IDE, go to File, New, and Tizen Native Project, and Sample. And this settings application is just a UI sample application, so let's go to Native UI app and Settings UI sample applications. The project name, I just named this as settings. Okay, here we go. So the first job is to go to a main function. There's nothing special, and this app create callback will be called when this app is created. And go to create base GUI function. And this application also create the elementary window widget first and sets the rotation properties and created a conformant. And next job is to set the indicators busy by using ermbgadd. And okay, now it's important. The first important widget which is created in this application is Navy frame. Navy frame manages the view changes of an application. So you can push and pop each view, and each view is called item. So you can push item. Here it looks like this create genist function creates a genist. Genist is a list which have more features than the normal list. And the next function is Navy frame item push. So this actually pushes the content into the Navy frame. And the title is settings. Okay, let's run this application. It's installed. It started automatically. As we expected, this is a Navy frame, and the title is settings, and the content is a list. So when you click a list, you go to the second view and clicking back key, then you go back to the first view. It's very simple. next, here is an App Store sample application. This application shows how to create a UI of an app which looks like this. As you can see it, there are a lot of content, so you need to scroll it down to see more. For each part of the sections, we used table, button, box, button, and box, and etc. So these tables and buttons and boxes are packed into a vertical box, and the vertical box is packed into a scroller again. So scroller has vertically long box and it is scrollable. Then we push this scroller into navy frame. So this scroller must be the first item of a navy frame. So if we click any button in this view, next view will be pushed and we will have a second view. But in this application, those kind of actions are not implemented. This is just for the UI sample. So let's test this App Store application from Tizen IDE and the emulator. Same, go to the file, new, in Tizen native project, and sample, UI app. There's one, application store UI sample application. Name it like this and finish. Okay, it's created. Let's go to the main function again, and there's nothing new, and let's go to the app create. There's nothing new, and create base GUI. Okay, here the first widget is elementary window, and it's the same, the conformant was added, background for indicator, and it uses layout. Here, this is navy frame, and this actually manages the view changes of this application. And we did something by calling add main view. We don't know what they are doing now, but it looks like it's creating an object and pushes this object into a navy frame. I think now you understood this code, right? And the title is Application Store. When you move your mouse cursor on the API, then you will see a brief description of each API. So this ERM navy frame item push actually pushes a new item to the top of the navy frame stack and show it. So looks like that's it, and let's run this application. It's installed. Now it's running. Okay, so the title is Application Store. Same as here, and the content is something like this, and it must be a main view. So let's go into this add main view function. Here it creates a scroller and vertical box, and for the vertical box it creates a table and item header, item content, and etc. This must be the first table here. Add item table. Here table is created and image is created and buttons are created as well. So this is a code for these buttons. At this moment, there is nothing to do with this button, so it doesn't do anything. So let's do something useful. Okay, here you can see how to add callbacks to the buttons. Avast Object Smart Callback Add button and click. Unpressed and pressed. So how do you know there are this kind of callbacks for buttons? Then you have to go back to the documentation. The buttons, there are callbacks like clicked, repeated, pressed, and unpressed. So through this documentation, you get the idea of what kind of callbacks this widget supports. So here, clicked, let's go to the clicked callback. Oh, it doesn't do anything here. So now I just quit this application. Let's just call this UIF exit. This is an application framework API, and it actually exits the app. It exits the main loop of application. So this means this application will be terminated. Save it and run. Okay, now I'm going to click this button. Oh yes, as expected, this application is terminated. So in this way, you can just modify the samples and templates and learn about EFL and how to create the layout of EFL applications, and just put your application's logic between them. In this way, you can create your application's layout with container widgets, but you have to think carefully before you dive into the code, or you'll have to rewrite your code again and again later. Now your job is to put the application's logic in the source code and breathe a new life into your app. Finally, you are ready to upload your applications upon the Tizen store. Okay, during this presentation, I covered how to write Tizen native UI application. First, use EFL for UI layout, and second, use elementary container widgets for the layout. This is the most common and easiest way to construct the layout of your application. As Tizen covers multiple profiles and devices, it is important to support a good performance and small memory footprint in any devices. The Tizen native framework makes you write light and fast applications, thus it meets Tizen's needs. Because Tizen and EFL are open sources, you can get more information from their websites. Tizen.org for the Tizen, enlightenment.org for EFL. I hope this webinar would be a good starting point for your first Tizen native UI application. If you have any questions or doubts, please send me an email. Thank you very much.